He's magnanimous, he's gracious, he's humble, he's funny, he's self-deprecating.
Is the most corrupt and elite-drenched administration we've had in modern history.
Even during the worst days of Richard Milhouse Nixon, they didn't go as far as Donald Trump is going.
I don't expect to see a miracle in 100 days, but I feel like he is accomplishing a lot.
He said, real power is fear.
All presidents obfuscate, exaggerate, but I think he takes it to a step we've never seen.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
You know, I've been so blessed to have a front row seat of history for the last 2 years, and Inauguration Day was a culmination of 2 long years of hard work, not just from me, but from so many other people who saw something in Donald Trump that very few people saw at the beginning. And Inauguration Day, I had a high privilege of being up on the podium, on the platform, when he was sworn in as the 45th President of the United States, and so few people have that opportunity. And thinking back and looking at it now, it's amazing to know that a friend of mine is the President of the United States, and I'm very, very humbled by that.
January 20th, 2017 will be remembered as the day the people became the rulers of this nation again.
What's particularly, poignant about that day was Hillary standing behind him, and I have a lot of respect for her having the wherewithal to do that on that day. My husband and I went to New Orleans, and we were getting our rental car during his actual speech, and I said, I don't want to hear it. And then I heard other people in another car listening to it, and I caught American Carnage, and I thought, let's turn this on and listen to it.
The crime and the gangs and the drugs that have stolen too many lives and robbed our country of so much unrealized potential. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now.
Suggesting that there were immigrants lurking behind every bush and that people were going to, jump out and, get people. That's not a positive vision for the country. It's a very dark vision for the country. I thought his speech was a reversal of decades of American presidents, Republican and Democrat alike, who have talked about an important American leadership role around the world. It sounded like a full-scale retreat, the America First language.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America First. America First.
We have to understand the 1930s. We have to realize that there was another globalization, that globalization failed, that its failure was the First War, the Depression, the rise of fascism, and so on. Mr. Trump, in a very sad way, I would say a tragic way, confirms this thesis in his inauguration speech. The idea of America First in the 1930s was that we should not have Roosevelt, we should not have the welfare state, and above all, we should not resist Nazi Germany. So America First is not just the war cry of chauvinism or nativism. It is those things. It's also a very specific reference to the 1930s, a kind of nostalgia for the 1930s. We can be 100% sure that Mr. Trump and his key advisor, Mr. Bannon, who probably helped write the speech, knew exactly what America First meant. A journalist told him that this was in fact the name of a movement in 1940 to try to keep America out of the Second World War, which included nativists and nationalists and fascists and sympathizers of Nazi Germany and so on. And Mr. Trump acknowledged that he knew that. So he had been told multiple times before the inauguration what America First meant, and he still chose to make it the main theme of the inauguration.
Beautiful. Great playing. Really beautiful.
What's your favorite thing about Donald Trump?
Yeah.
You're just gonna say yeah?
Look at that guy over there. Wow.
Hunter had the hair. He had the hair. That's all real. And got him a suit. The crowd around us at the arena were so incredible. They were incredible. They loved this little guy. They wanted the big guy to see the little guy.
Bring him up.
Bring him up. And the crowd just went wild. I feel like what you see is what you get with him. So when he puts himself out there as the person he is, to me, I feel like that's who he is.
What's your name?
Name.
Now, he's supposed to look like Donald Trump, but he's actually much too good looking. You are really handsome.
When he gets off that stage, when he's at home, when he's in the White House, he's the same person he is on TV. And that's what I like, and that's what drew me to him.
Do you want to go back to them, or do you want to stay with Donald Trump?
Trump.
So I feel like him being unpolished and sometimes raw, I feel like that's a person.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe. These attempts to lessen the enthusiasm of the inauguration are shameful and wrong.
I have a running war with the media. They are among the most dishonest human beings on earth. Well, the failing New York Times wrote a big, long front-page story yesterday. And it was very much discredited, as you know. It's a joke.
I think he's a risk to the free press because he has so much power. He's the president. He has a great audience, and they listen to him. For me, this is the most exciting story of my journalistic career, without question. I think this administration has said, to be frank, pretty vicious things about the press. And that makes me anxious, and I think it's designed to erode confidence in the press. I use the word lie in a headline because I thought he told a lie. I think we have a president who exaggerates, tries to change the subject. I don't think we've ever seen a president like this.
I have never heard or seen such outrageous, vicious, distorted reporting in 27 years of public life.
Washington Post journalists Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein reported with confirmation from their anonymous source, Deep Throat. This team was instrumental in unraveling the Watergate case.
Nixon's press secretary, after really a year of the stories we were doing, he publicly apologized to the Washington Post and Carl Bernstein and myself. I don't know we're at a point where something like that may happen, but we'll see. So much is hidden, so we have got to be in the media aggressive, but we need to make lists of people who might know something, talk to them all, go back, go see people at night, go see people in their offices. We want to know what's really happening.
He has dropped bombs all over Washington. He's picked as his EPA director a guy who's skeptical about, what the EPA does. So it's like opened up, there are lots of people who want to talk, who want to protest, and their way of protesting is to become sources. Washington now is filled with people who want to talk, some of them close to the president, by the way, because not everybody around him agrees with him.
The process is so revealing. How did they make major decisions. How did Watergate come about? How did the Iraq War come about?
The president is saying goodbye to his cabinet and White House staff and public ceremonies in the East Room of the White House this morning. That's at that end.
Even during the worst days of Richard Milhouse Nixon, they didn't go as far as Donald Trump is going in terms of trying to sell the American public on something that is patently not true. I think it's worse now because it goes on 24/7. He's a whirling dervish. We never know quite which Donald Trump is going to show up, and believing what contrived fact he may have in mind that may have changed in the last 24 hours.
The crowds are always bigger. Their support is always greater. They've created more jobs than anybody else after 20 minutes in the White House. They've done all this stuff. And I think that, you know, is a little bit harder to deal with.
My idol has become Kellyanne Conway. She's my idol.
And they're giving Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Wait a minute, alternative facts?
I always felt like what I watched on the news was factual, was golden. I believed what I saw on the news. I don't really feel that way anymore.
Look, alternative facts are not facts. They're falsehoods.
And this is very important because without truth, you can't have trust. Without trust, you can't have the rule of law. Without the rule of law, you can't have a democracy. So for me, the open attack on factuality is a kind of ideology and one that I think we should take seriously.
I will also say that there's one odd anomaly. He's the most accessible president in my lifetime. I mean, I ran the Washington Bureau of the New York Times for all of Barack Obama's first term and a big chunk of his second, and I never met him the whole time I ran the Washington Bureau, even though my office was 6 blocks from the White House. I've met this guy twice. He calls our reporters every couple of weeks. I suspect if I step out of here now and try to call him, I'll be able to reach him. He's not nasty in his one-on-one conversations with reporters. He's respectful. So I think some of it is show, but I think it's him.
What follows is my 100-day action plan to make America great again. It's a contract between Donald J. Trump and the American voter, and it begins with bringing honesty, accountability, and change to Washington, D.C.
President Trump's embattled National Security Advisor, General Michael Flynn, stepping down Monday night in a firestorm of criticism after misleading Vice President Mike Pence and others about his conversations with the Russian ambassador to the United States.
Donald Trump lets the world know he's going to be unlike any U.S. president before him.
Is there anyone in the White House who can say to you, Mr. President, please don't tweet that, who you would listen to?
Well, let me tell you about Twitter. I think that maybe I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Twitter because I get such a fake press.
I love the Twitter feed. You know why? He is the Ernest Hemingway of 140 characters. That's what he is.
We just received the actual text of the order a few minutes ago. It puts a 90-day halt on all visitors entering the U.S. if they come from Iraq, from Syria, or any country that has supported acts of international terrorism.
Federal judge at this hour granting a Washington Attorney General's request to immediately halt President Trump's executive order on immigration nationwide.
It's been a hugely successful first 100 days.
Repeal and replace the disaster known as Obamacare.
It throws millions, 24 million Americans off of their insurance.
If this is clearly going down, Republicans likely will vote against it en masse, and it would go from a bad defeat to a very, very bad defeat.
What happened on the floor is a victory for the American people.
Why do you think you weren't able to craft a deal among the Republican Party?
Well, we were very close. We were just probably anywhere from 10 to 15 votes short.
The contract with the American voter that the president signed included 10 pieces of legislation. Right now, he's 0 for 10. Only one of those has actually been introduced.
Right. And I think that we're going to continue to work with Congress. As he says in that document, I will work with Congress to achieve these, and we're going to continue to work with Congress to achieve those.
After 2 years of Trump, it'll be hard to prove that Obama was ever president because the things he tried to do will have been undone. Those who are complaining are not paying attention to all of the progress that's taking place on courts, on the regulatory side. He legalized the pipeline in from Canada.
He is going through a 100-day identity crisis right now, Trump is. So I think his base, they continue to strongly support him, but you saw popular opinion run away from him, and he's got the historically lowest approval ratings of any president.
Well, you know, one of the things Donald Trump said on the campaign trail was he was the great deal maker. He was the great negotiator, you know. I wrote the art of the deal. I know how to knock heads together and get things done in Washington. Well, it was no deal when it came to his proposal to destroy the Affordable Care Act. I think they totally miscalculated. So all of a sudden, people who had voted for Donald Trump in many of the rural areas were waking up and saying, hey, this is not what we bargained for.
Specifically, what did he do?
You have to remember, Barack Obama took 14 months under a Democrat-controlled House and Senate to get Obamacare done. The president's trying to repeal it in the first 60 days.
There's not one thing in particular that I feel like was done, accomplished, and over, and I didn't expect that.
It's a mistake to think that Donald Trump has not made a lot of changes just because he's had legislative defeats. They're transforming the way the country and industry is regulated.
His pick for the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, which regulates 15% of the economy. Television, radio, cable, satellite, is a complete deregulator. This is a huge shift. It's like taking an entire part of the economy and making it dramatically more free market, whereas Obama was turning it into a public utility. It's as big as Obamacare.
Look, I think he's holding his campaign promise. And the biggest accomplishment that the president has had so far was an executive order that said, buy America, buy American, and hire American. And I know that sounds terrible if you're outside from the U.S., and it sounds like isolationism. But just like Theresa May is in favor of helping Great Britain, and Angela Merkel is in favor of helping her country, this president has said, we're going to make America great again. It's the campaign slogan he ran on.
You must remember, just take recent examples of presidents who had gotten themselves in trouble. Bill Clinton was impeached. He got off. He wasn't found guilty. He got reelected by an enormous margin when he ran for reelection. George Bush, 43, had a very strong public support until the war began to go south and the economy went to hell, frankly.
Maybe there will be some stabilizing, but we're going to see. And we're not going to know, and people want to, they're jumping into the future, which I think journalists have never been very good at.
Because there's all this stuff we don't know. We really don't know that much, enough about the president's finances, and we don't know the role Russia played in the elections. We do know the FBI director says they tried to influence the elections. So I think we're covering that aggressively, and it makes him nuts.
We will be vigilant. We do know that democracy dies in darkness, so we have to work hard. Could this administration or any administration become a threat? Certainly.
Someone who looks like a clown may just be somebody whose way of seeing the world is going to work better in a different political system. And he might just be able to make your political system become that political system. The people who are referred to as the moderates in the White House are A, nepotists, because they're his immediate family, and B, kleptocrats, because they are taking part in a family business, which is helped by the fact that Mr. Trump is the president. If you have someone like this in the White House, you must be on guard the entire time that he's in office. You can't let yourself be drawn into the day-to-day where one thing happens that seems more or less reasonable, and then you forgive him everything else. You forgive him calling judges so-called judges. You forgive him admiring only foreign tyrants. You forgive him for saying that if he didn't win by democratic means, he'd use other means to come to power. You forgive him for using fascist-style rhetoric in his election campaign. We just can't afford to delude ourselves that way.
I know he has the drive to go after what he wants. He needs the support in Washington to make that happen. I don't see myself abandoning him at all.